Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Rafael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Rafael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Jared, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me on Coaching Call. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to our conversation today.
So am I. I'm excited because you know what dedication is. You know what commitment is. Above all, so many people out there. And what people may not understand is that you're an athlete. You're an elite athlete. And you
Yes.
have been that your whole life. And I want to get into it, man. I'm excited for this. But I also want to get to know you as a person besides an athlete, and your thoughts, ideas, and how you even became to who you are today. And that stems from your childhood. Where were you born? Who influenced you before the age of 10? So many things we can uncover here.
So many things. So I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm a first-generation American. So my mom and my grandmother, they escaped the Hungarian Revolution in 1956 and came over to the United States. And so in terms of my biggest mentor or person who had the most impact on me was probably my mother from a young age, because she was my grandmother and my mother. They were both ballet dancers, and then they became teachers. So I grew up around ballet and in my mother's studio. So she was a huge influence on me. Me and my older brother were always in the ballet studio with her, probably just sitting in the corner eating pizza and playing with our Matchbox cars.
So you saw what was going on. What triggered you to say, I want to do it too?
Well,
At what age would you say?
Well, I think, growing up around dance and ballet specifically, I was in the studio. So my mom started putting my brother and we would start being in her classes and learning the technique of it. And then there were some performances. And as a young child, you just kind of go with the flow. Like, hey, go and do this. And you went and did that. Being a young child with a lot of energy, it was a good use of that energy, right? That was a great outlet, a lot of jumping and turning and moving around the studio. So I think that really appealed to me at that age. It wasn't until I probably got into my teens that I really made a choice and being like, hey, I actually have some ability and some talent in this area. I'd been accepted to a lot of prestigious schools to train further. And then I was like, okay, I need to do this a little bit more seriously, which is really probably about 15 years old when I made the choice to actually come to the University of North Carolina School of the Arts for high school, which is where I now teach.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a full circle. As my partner, she always teases me, is like, oh, you went back to your high school to teach.
And thinking about that, a lot of people, men that I've spoken to, they're like, dance is for girls. I don't know. I can't dance.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dance is for everybody.
Yeah.
That particular dance, ballet, is really your whole body's involved. It's not just your legs. It's every little nuance, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're moving so cross laterally all the time, right? So it's not just one thing you're isolating. And I don't think in any movement you can really isolate a particular muscle, or I mean, if you're doing a punch, you're not necessarily just using your hand or your arm. It's your whole body should be invested. So, with ballet, you know, the idea that dance is not also for men, that is more of a United States or an American kind of
Mm.
perspective. Because if you go to Europe or any and many other countries, dance is just an accepted part of
Yeah.
your personal expression. And
Mhm.
it's celebrated in so many countries. The US not so much. And
Right.
so I certainly dealt with those kinds of things around that as I was training as a young man and trying to, understand where do I fit in the world doing this thing that I do.
Wow, that's a very interesting. When you think about how people view things, right, worldwide, certain countries see something one way. Uh, when you started really understanding that this is what you wanted to do, friendships,
Mhm.
what were they?
Well, unfortunately, I think like any discipline or
Mm,
activity that you invest yourself in, you end up in a peer group, right? Who is also invested in that experience and whatever that is. So you develop these shared experiences with this group of people, and I think I was very fortunate. Dance feels it's such a small community and tight community.
mm,
So, and you're working physically together every day. And so you build up these common experiences and friendships and tight relationships with the people that you're working with and you're training with. And so I was very fortunate in that respect. I still stay in touch with people that I trained with when I was in high school.
mm.
Social media is fantastic for that
Right, right.
because you all scattered to the winds, as adults and go your own separate ways and live your lives. But I really do. It's one of the things that I really appreciate uh, about having my career and my life in dance is the friendships and the relationships I've cultivated
Mm.
throughout my life, and that's just not just nationally but internationally. So I have friends all over the world, and I'm very very grateful for having those relationships.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Here's the question that I personally have. Do men in ballet compared to women in ballet, do they have to do pointing stuff more than women or less than women? Or is
Good.
it that it's prevalent for women?
Yeah, good question. So I think what you're talking about is point work, where the girls go up on their toes. So really, in general, it is the female body dancers who go up on their toes. So there's many reasons for that. Um, in general, female body dancers are lighter. So imagine putting all of your weight on literally the tips of your toes, and you have a shoe to support it, right? Male bodies are heavier, we're denser, and that's harder to do. But in terms of the technique, in terms of the pedagogy, in terms of the classical canon, in general, it is the female body dancers who will be the ones on point. Men don't really do that. There are a few roles that they do that, and right now in the repertory, for the most part, those are really kind of playful, kind of tongue in cheek men dressing up in drag and doing certain roles in that way. It's not supposed to be drag, but men dressing as women, and so it becomes a comedic highlight, you might say, of that particular dance that you're doing.
So men definitely have to do the lifting,
Hmm.
right, as well. Um, what would you say was one of your, performances that you were like, "I nailed it. I am beyond thrilled." Because I'm sure that there was mishaps as well, but what would you say was one of the ones that really you go, "Wow, this was really, amazing."
I was very fortunate. I had a lot of opportunities to have those moments, right? When you're in a company and you're doing so many performances. Certainly there's probably more of the that show didn't go as I was hoping than the shows that I
Mm,
was like, that was amazing. Because you definitely those felt few and far between. And certainly I think that's a lot of your own personal expectation. You're like, I really want the show to go a certain way. So you're gonna be uh incredibly self-critical about everything that you do on stage. But I did have, talking about a particular experience. There's a ballet, it was at the latter part of my career. I was in Boston at the time, dancing for Boston Ballet. There's a ballet called Unwavering. And it's just a fantastic ballet, amazing music, amazing choreography, and the role that I was dancing. Just had a really good show. And when you get through a full-length ballet doing a narrative character, and to be able to tell that story and then also do the technical aspects of that role and artistically have an interpretation for that evening. I think of, there was actually, in that run of shows that we were doing, there are probably 3 or 4 that I felt really proud of, and like they really stick in my mind as being personal and professional successes. Whether that was thought of from the audience or not, it's such a personal thing as an artist when you're performing, how that feels for you, right? There are shows where I felt, oh, I was not very good. The audience loved it. There were shows that I felt like that was like me dancing my best, and then the audience felt a little flat. Now, that's not necessarily the reality of the situation, that they felt those things, but in terms of being a performer on the stage and feeling the feedback that you have when you're in a live performance situation, that was my perspective.
Bringing that around, what would your next performance be if you felt that the audience felt flat?
I never really got invested in terms of what my expectation for the audience was.
Okay.
The next thing would be if I felt like I didn't, the last show, I didn't do my best. It wasn't, maybe the audience wasn't with me in whatever I was doing. The next show is like, all right, let's just maybe we're going to get a little bit warmer, make sure I have more preparation time before the show, and just kind of think through the role a little bit more, and kind of like, okay, what do I need to do better today? Because there was always that every performance, no matter how many times I danced roles, like, what could I do better or differently today to make it interesting for myself? Because when it was interesting for me, hopefully the audience will pick up on that vibe, right? You want to project a certain thing and communicate a certain thing to the audience. So you want to bring them along for the ride. Some days they come along with you, and some days it feels like they don't come along with you. And I think that goes both ways, right? Because people are people. Who knows what happens? But you try to do your best every day.
And I'm thinking, I consider you an athlete, and you are an athlete. But I said earlier, a lot of people don't think that a ballet dancer is an athlete. They just say dancer, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of like, no, you have no idea the amount of effort and time and practice goes to that one performance. Do you, or anybody in your industry, do you go back and view the performance and then see how you performed?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're very fortunate for the technology that we do have, right? As far as the athlete question is concerned, a typical day in a professional ballet dancer in a professional company would be every morning, 5 days a week, you take an hour-and-a-half class in the morning. So you're with a big group of the company, you take a class. That's your warm-up for the day. It has nothing to do with any kind of rehearsal. So it's an hour-and-a-half every day that you do. And then you go after that, you go into around between 4 and 6 hours of rehearsal every single day. So you're physically active, probably about averaging about 6-7 hours every day, all week long. So about 30 hours, give or take. And then that doesn't even include any kind of warm-ups, any kind of warm downs, any kind of supplemental work that you might do. Like I would go to the gym all the time and lift weights to try and make sure, I'm supporting my upper body as best I can. So you're constantly doing it at least 5 days a week. When you go into the performance season, you're really looking at it's a 6-day week when you're performing. So it's a hard schedule, and it's all physical, right? It's obviously there's emotional and intellectual aspects as well, and artistic, but it's hard on the body, right? It's a young man's profession. Just like gymnastics, just like pro sports, football, basketball, baseball, you name it. It's for the younger of body.
Oh yeah. What is a that hour and a half warm up, if you will? What does that look like?
So
If
that
you
will go
give
ahead.
us a quick rundown, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I can break it down because now I teach, so I could break it
I
down.
got
But
that part.
okay, so it's a ballet class that you're going to do every day, and this is standard across the world. You can go any company anywhere in the world; they're going to be doing the same thing, relatively. In turn, the exercises might be slightly different, but what that means is you're going to be at the ballet bar for anywhere from like 30, let's say 25 to 40 minutes. That's just at the ballet bar doing the exercises that you do, and there's pedagogy around that, and then you come into the center, and then you're going to do all the things that you need to kind of get your body ready. So you'll do movements that are slow, then you'll do some things that turn, so you do all different kinds of turns, and then you do little jumps, and then medium jumps, and then large jumps. So you're doing all of these things every day, and so you have to fit all of that in an hour and a half. And in Boston Ballet, we were a company, I think we were about 60 dancers at the time I was there. So imagine a room full of 60 professional dancers doing it at the very highest level. If people are interested, you can look at to see what a company class looks like. You can go and Google World Ballet Day, and on World Ballet Day, they follow they film company class from around the world. Everyone's doing a class. So you can see exactly what professional dancers do. And they're really interesting because they'll pull dancers aside while in the middle of class and they'll do little interviews. So if you're interested in that, you can certainly look at that on YouTube. There's
You said
here.
World Ballet Day?
World Ballet Day, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to encourage everybody to take a look because it'll give you a better perspective, right?
Yeah. And I like to watch it. I go and I look through the classes and I see friends of mine who are still dancing. Obviously, I've retired from the stage now, but I look at the classes. I see that now I know the teachers more than I know the dancers. So I'm like, oh, look at this person. Look at what they're teaching. Look at the company. Look at all those. Oh, that's that young dancer that I've seen on Insta or whatever. So it's always fun to see them working, not the fully produced performance that they're doing, but they're just daily work, their process. How are they approaching their work? And I find that very interesting and informative from both sides, from both watching the dancers and watching the teachers as well.
Absolutely. When did ballet start?
Gosh, ballet is over 200 years old now, right? So King Louis XIV, the Sun King, it was in the French courts, and so he started it there, and it became in vogue because he loved to dance, and then it became more formalized through the years with the Italians, with the French, with the Russians. Most people equate ballet with the Russians, even though it was the French who it started with the French.
What would you say were some of your favorite dancers growing up when you were a teenager? Who did you aspire to be? Because there were some who were beyond incredible.
Yeah.
I have one that comes to mind, right?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, it was always about Mikhail Baryshnikov. His whole story of his defection and then coming to the West. And he was just, and this was at the height of the Cold War, mind you. So things that, this generation doesn't have the perspective on what the Cold War felt like and looked like in terms of, dancers and artists and people being not allowed to move around relatively freely. Obviously, we're talking immigration issues right now, but at the height of the Cold War, where we're in the threat of nuclear war and everything, to have a Russian dancer come across where these Russian dancers were viewed as they were cultural assets and they were treasures of their countries.
Yeah.
And so for them to come over, I mean, it was a big blow to Russia and a great benefit to the United States for when Baryshnikov came over. So Baryshnikov, just again, still to this day, I watch his videos, I watch his performances, and there are intangible qualities of what he does. I can break down technically what he does, but like probably anything, if I look at what he does today compared to today's dancers can do more things that are technically more challenging and difficult, but the way he did the things, the way he executed the steps and approached his roles, they still are, for me, you know, no one has better interpretations than Misha. We call him Misha. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
Baryshnikov. There's also Rudolf Nureyev, who is obviously before him. So those two male figures were, you know, these were titans in the ballet world for male dancers.
Right, right, right. How, and you just brought that up a little bit, that the dancers of today do more technical, difficult stuff than
Mhm.
what we were seeing back then. So ballet has evolved.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like anything. You know, the younger generations build on what the older generations pioneered, right? So look at ice skating, for instance, right? Everyone used to do double turns in the air. Then they were doing triples, and now they're doing quads, and that's now men and women are doing it. And so, you know, that was unheard of like 30 years ago, that they would be doing all of these incredible tricks. And in terms of that's kind of the same as you go with ballet has done that as well. Dancers are more able to do these things because the bar has been set. They've seen it on YouTube and then they try it, and you know, um, and so the technique has been pushed forward in that respect.
Mm. Talk to me about injuries in ballet overall.
Yeah, you know, it's common, just like any athletic endeavor.
Right.
You're going to have injuries. You're going to have overuse injuries. You're going to have tendonitis. You're going to have bigger things. I can say that during my career, I was very fortunate that I only suffered a few injuries. I did tore my ACL in my knee when I was really
Mm.
young. And then I had some, you know, torn meniscus and cartilage in my knees. But that's about all the injuries I had personally. But for dancers in general, you know, it just depends. There's any number of things. I think the overuse injury is really the big one that people just deal with on a daily basis. All the tendonitises and whatnot. Just you know, you can't just keep that. You can't keep the machinery going full blast 24/7 and not expect something to give at some point. So
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. What what was the after an event, um did you did you have to perform Saturday and Sunday,
mhm.
or did you perform during the week? How many days in a row would you perform?
Yeah. So a normal production week is usually Monday is usually our dark day, and that's, you know, that's held up throughout the world. Usually Monday is usually a dark day, meaning no one's in the theater, no one's performing, and then we would go Tuesday to Sunday. So
Mm,
normal to have like evening shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday would usually be a double show day. You do matinee and evening.
mm,
So something around that. You'd be doing 7, 8 shows a week, depending on what you're doing, what that looks like. So it's a heavy schedule.
mhm. Well, and you're performing this whole time.
Yeah, you're performing, and then in the after, so you're performing usually in the evenings, and during the afternoons, you're going to be doing your company class in the morning, and then you're going to be rehearsing for a couple hours as well. So you're going to be rehearsing, and maybe not even that performance, that show. Usually not that show. You'll be doing something else, preparing for
Mm,
the next thing coming. So
no.
never a dull moment.
No, I can see that. Definitely a very, demanding schedule.
Mhm,
Not only demanding mentally, but physically.
mhm. Yeah.
How do have you seen breakdowns because of the demand on the mental state?
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens. And certainly, you know, there's also a lot of pressure that you put on yourself. Performing is i- is emotionally and not just physically, but emotionally challenging to
Mm,
have to like manage your nerves and bring the absolute best of yourself to the stage every time that you hit the stage, right? I mean, that takes it out of a person. So, in terms of breakdowns, I think usually what I feel probably more now that we're more recognizing the signs and um, the situations that occur when we're being emotionally stressed like that. You know, there's probably more people who are being like, I just can't go on tonight. That's
mm,
hard because it's a profession, right? So the show has to go on. I think usually a lot of the things when we're talking about emotional breakdowns or in that respect, it's more going to manifest, I feel, in the injury situation where people are just like, I just can't. My back is hurting today, my knees, my ankles, my feet. So people kind of would take an off ramp that way. And that's a healthy thing in that respect. Again, when we're talking about kind of the evolution of the art form and this particular industry and business, I think we're at least being a little bit more honest about what's going on, that it's healthy and okay for people to like, hey, I cannot perform today, then I just need to not do that today, right? It's hard on the company because somebody has to go on, but I think we have more honest conversations around those aspects of the profession, which is a good thing. I see that in the studio now, pedagogically, how I teach and how I coach and how I work with dancers. We take a more humanistic approach that this is a human being. This is not just another cog in the machine, that's a disposable, whatever, objective robot, automaton just going through the motions. Like, no, this is a human being. It's best for all the way around. We have good, healthy conversations and communication, and I figure out what's going on. That person gets the stress off of them if they know, hey, I really do not feel like this can happen today. Can I take a break? And if you're like, okay, I completely hear you, go ahead and take the break. They come back the next day refreshed and feeling they can actually rest versus going home and having that anxiety about, I did something I shouldn't have done. I should be out there. So, it's just a balancing act. And it's not just a balancing act. It's just being a human being and seeing and hearing a human being's experience and validating those things, that these are valid things, and they are not, it's not a dancer or a student being unprofessional. It's them just expressing to you the truth of their universe and their world at that moment.
It makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you, because you just kind of said it, but I just want to reiterate it, because if we're stressed, that's going to reflect our body's going to go into stress as well, right? Mentally, if we're stressed. So it does make sense to take a break. Is that why a company would have 60 or 50 dancers? Because if somebody gets hurt or somebody just can't perform that day, so somebody steps in their place?
Yeah, it's normal that in a company of 50, 60, there's companies that are 80 and 100 dancers. You have a large company, you have a huge repertory. Not every dancer is going to be doing every performance or every show even. But then you have multiple casts of the same thing, just like a lot of other productions as well. So you have a lot of different dancers, you have different casts, so that if somebody does go out injured, you put the other cast in. You have understudies if for whatever role somebody goes out injured, sick, family emergency, life, car, you name it. Anything can happen. So you have to make sure that you have enough dancers on hand to cover people when they need to go out, so that it can continue and move forward.
Wow, I really appreciate you enlightening us today. That's incredible. Talk to me about when you retired and what was the catalyst for that? Why retire?
Yeah, well, that's a great question in terms of that. Well, how old was I? When I kind of officially retired, I was 38 years old. I've been dancing professionally for 20 years. The year before, I had been offered another position to run one of the schools, one of the satellite schools for Boston Ballet. And so I had been running one of the satellite school and dancing full time. So I was doing 2 full-time jobs the year before I retired. And that was offered to me again the next year to continue doing that. And I was like, you know what? This is a good place for me to call it a day. I thought I have a great transition going from, dancing full time, where my body, you slow down a little bit. It hurts a little bit more. I was very fortunate that I always kept my conditioning up as best I possibly could. But I thought I have an opportunity to move on to the next thing and start transferring my information to this next generation of dancers. And I took that opportunity to go ahead and do that. I had a great last season. I danced more. I think my first season with Boston Ballet and my last season were my two of the best of my entire career. So I felt really, really full, so to speak, artistically when I made the decision to retire. And just like anybody, it's always great to have the option to decide when you retire versus someone retiring you.
Mm.
You
Well,
know,
that makes a lot of sense.
so I was like, this is a great place. You know, there's younger dancers who I see them just killing it out there, who are coming up underneath of me, like behind me. And I was like, I got to get out of the way. They're going to blow me off the stage anyway. So let them go and do their thing. I'm going to move on and do, you know, the next chapter of my life.
Wow, next chapter of your life makes me think that professional ballet dancers, once they retire, if you want to keep your same lifestyle, you have to get a job or create a company or
Yeah.
do something. Is that because there's no retirement fund, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of the great ones want, like yourself, want to help the next generation,
Hmm.
right? To because your passion is still there. Just because you're retired doesn't mean you let everything go away, right?
Right. Exactly.
Had you already started planning on your retirement when you knew? And then did you say, I'm going to set these things in place so I can still live the lifestyle I want to?
Yeah, I think, um, you know, the career is short.
Mhm.
Um, in comparison to many careers, when you're, you know, you're lucky if you get to your late 30s. That is a long career, late 30s. um I think in any physical endeavor, most physical endeavors, I should say.
Right.
But I had been teaching for about 10 years, and that's kind of the pivot, right? Like I've been doing this thing for a really long time, and I've been teaching, been offered lots of guest teaching opportunities, so I've been teaching. And I've been thinking about it, what comes next. Do I work with their roles within a company where
Mhm.
you're working with the dancers? There's just teaching students. There's directing companies. There's directing schools, and I've been thinking about those things. I was fortunate because I was offered the opportunity to run a satellite school, so I was in effect directing a school. So that was my pivot point there, and I was like, this had kind of culminated, and I'd been given opportunities and mentorship to get to that place,
Mm.
as the people around me had seen that I had an affinity for teaching and an affinity for leading and the competence there. And so they were giving me opportunities to develop those skill sets. So I was very fortunate in that transition. But you do have an eye on those things when you're dancing and when you're in your careers, like what comes next at the latter part. You get older, you have maturity, you have this life experience, and you're kind of like, okay, there are other things in life too that were interesting to me, and I still have that to this day. Like there's so many other things that are interesting outside of my field. You only have so many hours in the day to pursue as many things as you want to, but I still have so many varying interests that fall outside of my field, even though they might impact it in one way, shape, or form. But only so many hours in the day. You can only read so many books in a day or a week or a month.
Right, right. One of the things that I always say is that not everyone is cut out to be a teacher.
Mhm.
They don't have the patience, they don't have the know-how, or how to articulate their own movements because they may be a great performer themselves, yet they can't get somebody else to do it the same way. And you are a master teacher. When did you know that you can teach others?
Um, well, I'm still working on that one, right? um, well, again, I was fortunate. My mother was a ballet teacher, and so I grew up with her teaching students and being around it all the time. And I think a lot of that rubbed off on me. And when I really felt those things is that I felt like, okay, this is something I can pursue. I'm actually having a positive effect on the students around me. I felt pretty early in my career, like it's all about connection and communication when you're in the studio. It doesn't matter the what of what you're doing is almost irrelevant. It's not, of course, but the what is like anyone can teach the what. It's like, how do you do it and how do you communicate that? And how do you meet each individual where they are and try to bring them forward? And so I think early in my career, without obviously I could not articulate it like that, like I just did then, but now I have that perspective of there was the seed of that. And I was very fortunate to have so many people who believed in me as a teacher and as a human being, and that students responded positively to me. And so that's when you kind of feel like, okay, looks like I have aptitude. I have something important that I can communicate and pass along to these younger dancers. And even though I say younger dancers, I taught adult classes too, when people were much older than myself, when I was probably in my 20s and my 30s. And these are people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s would come and take ballet class. So being able to have like healthy dialogue with them, I actually love teaching adults because they ask the most interesting questions. Like you're teaching the thing and they're like, hey, why am I doing this? What is this for? And you can get very, very philosophical about what it is. You can get down to the nuts and bolts of what it is. So I think early on, that was kind of, this curiosity that I always had about what is the thing that I'm doing. I've been doing it my whole life. How can I reverse engineer it and deconstruct it for myself and build up other dancers?
I love that. When you decided that you were going to become a teacher full-time, or the career path that you took after you retired, why go back to your high school?
Well, I say that my partner said that jokingly, and she continues to kind of razz me about it a bit. But so University of North Carolina School of the Arts has a high school program and a college program. And this is one of the premier arts conservatories in the United States. So the school here where I teach now, we're very fortunate that we have these amazing facilities. We have 10 large studios that our dancers can work in. We have three theaters on our campus, or 2 on our campus and 1 downtown. So it presented so many opportunities for me to grow, to do it at such a high level. We have these world-class facilities. You're doing the repertory, the performances that you could put forward are just amazing. So that seemed like it's almost as good as being in a company. It's almost as good as being in a professional company, like working in a company, the kind of the platform that we have here. So I always thought it was a great place for me to pursue my teaching career. And
Nice.
leadership career as well, I should say.
Yeah, you said leadership, right?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So, well, first of all, being a teacher, as a teacher, being in the front of a room, whatever room that might be, you already are a leader. You have to lead your students with whatever you're teaching. When I came here, I was hired as the assistant dean for ballet by my former boss. So for that, I was working with my colleagues, and I kind of took care of them in terms of their scheduling and supporting them in whatever they needed in the studio. So there's all those leadership skills you are building as a teacher, and certainly as an assistant dean, working with your peers in that respect.
When you retired, you went from this grueling schedule, right?
Mhm.
What was your schedule like after?
After, in many ways, a lot harder.
Really? Tell me about that.
Well, it just becomes very different, right? When you're a dancer, like when you're dancing, you're in rehearsals, you have a little bit of control of your time in terms of, like, they give you the schedule, you know where you're supposed to be. All your other time is free to do whatever you want. whatever you feel like you need to. When you start teaching and start directing schools, you have your schedule, the actual schedule you're supposed to do, and then everything else that comes into play, the phone calls, the emails, the other initiatives you're going to pursue, and that fills in all that free time. So the schedule got a little bit deeper in terms of the number of hours. Certainly the physicality wasn't there, but you get very familiar with being sitting at a desk in for long periods of time.
That's probably not good for your body, right?
No, it's not the best, but I even to this day, I still stay as active as I possibly can.
Nice. So you understand production, right? You've seen it firsthand. You've been part of it. You've had to follow a choreographer's ideas, right?
Sure.
How hard was it to remember all of that when you're dancing, right? The choreography part.
Well, that's a skill you just build up, right? That becomes almost muscle memory, right? When you're in the moment, right? There's still in the moment, it's just there, right? You have drilled it, you've gone through it many times. For some reason, for me, when I hear the music for a particular ballet, it's easier for me to remember all the steps. I hear the music, I see the steps very clearly. It just happened the other day. I was teaching my students something, and I was trying to just do it without the music, and I was like, okay, this is not working. Put the music on, and it was like, oh, here it is. It's exactly this, right? So I think it just becomes so ingrained in you. All that choreography, even where am I? Gosh, it's been about 15 years since I've retired from the stage. So in terms of that, yeah, there's still things that I remember. I could do full sections of ballets. It's like, oh, turn the music on. I'm good to go. Let's go. No one wants to see that anymore, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, I can teach that now. I can show my students and teach them and work with them.
Well, you just kind of brought back an idea that sound is powerful.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when you go somewhere and you get a smell or you get something, but when you listen to music, your body knows what to do, even if you forgot.
Yeah.
And for me, when I hear music, I just want to move, right? My body's like takes over. When you're teaching your classes, are you teaching classes so that you're setting them up for an actual performance, or is it just to teach, and you're not involved in the performance part?
I do both. When I'm teaching my classes, so we have the difference between our classes and our rehearsals. So our classes, we're teaching the methodology and the pedagogy of what it is they're doing, right? There's a methodology about how you learn the basic fundamentals, the technique of what they are doing, just like any physical activity or anything really. There's techniques to what it is. So we work on their techniques. The idea, of course, is you build the strongest possible foundation for them. Then once they have that foundation, they can do anything they need to, right? It's all the tools. You give them the best tools in their toolbox, and then they can go and build whatever it is that they want to. So we do our morning classes, we do some afternoon classes, and then we do rehearsals. And when we go into rehearsals, then we're learning sections of ballets or full ballets and dances. So they're two separate things. They're similar skill sets, but they're different, right? Because when we're talking about our technique, we're not necessarily talking deeply about the artistic part of that. In terms of interpretation, you're not talking about artistic interpretation and finding, your inner story with what you're doing. You're going to do that in your rehearsals. The technique classes, yes, you are developing your artistic sensibilities, but you're really working on the fundamentals of the physical and the mechanical kind of technique of what it is you do. And no one come at me to say, okay, there's that. Yes, your ballet class can be absolutely artistic. I agree with that 100%. But when you're dealing with especially younger students who are just trying to understand the basics of what it is you're doing, you got to focus on that before we can really think about getting deeply into the emotional content of what you may or may not be dancing.
Gotcha. What's the earliest age that somebody can actually get involved with ballet?
Formalized ballet training, kind of I think kind of the benchmark, the standard is going to be formalized training, right? Is usually between 8 and 10 years old is when you're going to be able to do that. And that a lot of that has to do with human development. You know, a child has to be at a certain age to be able to understand all the things you're asking them to do, right? Take direction well, listen to music, work well with students. That's not to say that some of these creative movement classes aren't valuable. So younger children, you know, I see classes for children as young as like 2 and 3 years old. That's really young, but 3 years old, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, a creative movement kind of class where they're moving to music and learning how to interact with their peers, with other children is really helpful. Like, how do you go in a class, right? You have a bunch of kids. Can you get them to move from point A to point B? And, you know, and if you do it with music, that's even more complicated. So, you know, it's really 8, 9 is where you're bringing in a dancer to start their training, their real formalized training. Not to dissuade anyone from getting their children involved with dance earlier. It's just not going to be the actual formalized ballet training that you want to have to really have that strong foundational work.
I love the way you're talking to us about the fact that they're not ready for that type of work, because at 4 or 5, they're still trying to figure things out. Their balance is not that good. Do you teach balance, or does that come across they just get it?
The children have it. I mean, they'll have it with time. I think going back to the younger children, I think it's important that when kids are young, when they're really young, and I think as long as you can keep them, I think we should focus on creativity, really allowing children to learn about creativity and valuing creativity and exploring their own ideas about creativity in whatever direction that they go. So I think in those younger children, there's formative ages, to be really investing in that creativity in whatever direction that is, because I think that's what we need in the world and in life, right? I know we have AI now, but AI is nothing without the human creativity that fuels it, right? That feeds it. So, and then of course, as young adults and older adults, we need that creativity in our lives. That shows us how it helps us find solutions to everyday problems that we have. So if we can foster that at a very young age, then that's fantastic, right? We don't want to think about, moving on, talking about ballet training, we don't want to think about ballet training as not having a very important and significant creative component, but we're talking about teaching a fundamentals of movement, right? There's a technique to those things. So we want to always foster that creativity, because I think as human beings, that is so important. It's kind of our lifeblood, right? What is the world without that creativity in it?
Boring.
Everything becomes monotone, right? And even if we like monotone in terms of our wardrobe, we still need some creativity in our lives.
We definitely do. When you talked earlier about that you enjoy teaching adults because they ask these really interesting questions. What if somebody said, you know, I'm 55, I'm 65, I'm going to go try ballet? Would that be okay for them?
1,000%.
I
Do
love
it. It's
love it.
so healthy for you. It's so healthy. And as someone who tries to challenge themselves to get out of their comfort zone, I started climbing rock climbing at a very like maybe 10 years ago, which is like a late start. The humility that you have to come to something new with is hard. So someone who's thinking about, they want to try to go into do a ballet class or a dance class, just go and do it. Go and find a beginner class. You'll find a great community. You'll find that people are going to be very supportive of that. There's great from the interpersonal part of that. There's great from a physical part, from an emotional part. Especially as we're getting older, I think that physicality of ballet and dance is so great for your muscles, for your bone density, those who are getting older and worried about that. I heard something the other day that says the greatest indicator of how healthy someone's going to be later in their life is the strength of their legs. Because the stronger your legs are, right? What happens when you get older? You know, you hear about people falling and breaking a hip or a knee, or so ballet uses so much. You're on your legs all the time, and you're really building those muscles. So I think I encourage people who are even considering it to just go and try it. Go and find a local studio and give it a try. Wear something that's comfortable for yourself, and you know, just go to it with humility and with a sense of humor, because that's what it's going to feel like. I mean, that's anybody doing anything is going to be like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm successful in my career doing whatever it is, fill in the blank, and here I might as well be in kindergarten, you know, trying to figure out what's the basics of what it is I'm doing.
You just said go have fun, basically.
That's exactly what I said, right? I mean, you get older, is like, where's the judgment there? Just go and enjoy your life, you know, experience as many things as you can. If dance is the thing that you've always wanted to do, go and do it. Go and try it. Go take a Zumba class, go take a ballet class, or fill in the blank. I think you'll be happier for yourself. Even though, you know, that there's always that hurdle of that intimidation of like, I don't know, what if I'm not doing it right? Or who cares? Do it wrong. Enjoy, have fun.
As long as you do it right.
Exactly.
I love the fact that we're talking about movement, because movement, I basically say, saved my life, right? Movement is everything. It's everywhere. And we can't stay and sit and watch TV all day long. I think we need to move. So you talked earlier about a lot of times you had to be at a desk sitting down. Do you do the 50-minute hour, and then for the next 10 minutes move around? Do you go, I'll do some pirouettes or whatever? You do stuff like that?
I don't do any of that. So when I'm teaching, I'm up, I'm demonstrating, I'm showing, like I'm modifying it, but I'm up and moving when I'm teaching. When I was in my more administrative role, you literally are sitting at a desk, and I would have moments where I'd be like, okay, I've been sitting here for a long time. I'll get up and I'll walk the hallways. I'll go and watch classes. I'll go and do something. Usually I try to do, if I'm just in a heavy administrative period of time, I'll try and start my day with going to the gym, because then at least I've set my body up for the day. Like I go to the gym. When I go to the gym now, I do no more than an hour in the gym. I get in, I get out. And that's like right where my energy level will be good in terms of fueling myself. And so at least my body is moving well. And then I can go and sit at a desk longer. But even during the day, I'll get up and I'll move around, right? It's like being on an airplane. If you've been on like an international flight, you know, getting up every hour or two and just walking up and down the aisles is really healthy for everything, for your digestion, for getting over jet lag, for, you name it. It's helpful.
I had spoken to you earlier before we started the show about one of the instructors that used to work for me. And he gave me a month's notice because his wife was a professional ballet dancer, and she was going to do a tour in Asia. And so he goes, she's the breadwinner. I need to go. And I said, I understand 100%. And I said, I'd love for you to touch upon that, and what people can expect if they say this is a career path I may want. Is there health benefits? I guess it's the company you go with, right? What are the perks of choosing such a career?
Well, as you said, it depends on the company, but most companies now offer health insurance. A lot of them offer 403Bs or retirement plans. The companies that travel and tour a lot, the real perks of the job, I found was you first of all, your colleagues and your peers that you get to interact with on a daily basis. You're in the theater. You have this really wonderful world of being in the theater. So you're working with the crew that is there. The union crews, usually in most theaters. You get to, if you're fortunate, the company, you have live music. So you have musicians in the orchestra. So you're around that. that's always fantastic. And then just the people who are around art in general. There are so many people who really invest at every socioeconomic level, invest their time, energy, and their resources to coming and seeing live shows and performances. But as a performer, someone in a ballet company, you get to be in a community that really values art and creativity. And I find that to be wonderful still to this day, obviously, because that's still my community. The other perk for a dancer is if your company tours a lot, you get to travel and see so many cities that you wouldn't get to see. And ballet companies and dance companies in general, they're very international. So you have a wide, diverse group of people you're dancing with from all over the world. So, you have like an extended family globally that way, which is really a wonderful thing.
Nice. Jared, what's next for you? Because before you talked about a stage of your life, right? When you were a dancer,
Yeah.
and you've gone through other things. What's next for you, my friend?
What's next is hopefully a continuation of what I've been doing. I love to teach and coach both students and professional dancers, but I also have a real interest in working more broadly in the arts, doing creative and collaborative projects outside of dance within the artistic community. I find that to be really invigorating and interesting in the world that is so rapidly changing, especially when we consider technology and the advances that are happening with technology. I also am looking at different leadership opportunities in that way, and not for necessarily the career aspect of it, but it's an extension of being a teacher, of helping to support my colleagues, informed by my experiences and opportunities I've been fortunate to have. So, being in a position where I can help these other creatives around me would be just a real pleasure, and a real I'd be really grateful for doing that, and so that's kind of what I'm looking at in the future.
Nice. Well, we are coming to that time where, oh my gosh, I got to tell you, I am blessed that you said yes to being on the show, because you've enlightened me, if you will, right, about ballet. Because I've always seen it as beautiful. I mean, the moves that both male and female do, it's beyond, right? It's so incredible. The precision that we see as an outsider, right? Because I'm sure you may see a dancer go, oh, that was wrong. Right.
Right.
But we don't see that, right?
Right.
Because it's gorgeous, everything that's being done. So thank you for enlightening me and anybody else who's listening or watching on the replay. How we have your website going across the bottom.
Yeah.
What can somebody expect when they reach out to you and to connect with you?
Well, if people want to reach out and connect with me for either speaking engagements or consulting, whether it's from teaching or guest teaching or dancing or whatever area that's on my website, you're welcome to reach out to me. I'll get back to you very quickly, and just have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. Is it something? Are there opportunities that we can both pursue that make sense for both of us, right? How can I help you and support you in whatever endeavor you're pursuing? That is what you can expect from me.
Oh, I love it. And everybody, if you do reach out to him, don't forget to tell him that you saw him here. This is where you got to meet Jared and understand how incredible he is. Jared, what a pleasure, my friend. What would you, before we log off, what advice would you give somebody who is looking to pursue a professional dance career?
The advice that I would give would be to find the best teacher you can find, and really invest your time with them and understand, just like everything, it's a process. Learning any skill is a process, and learning dance is a process. So find the best teacher you can. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask questions, as many as you have. Maybe not in the classroom directly in that moment, but ask questions. Be curious. That curiosity is what's going to serve you well in your life, as you pursue the professional career or whatever it is that you want to pursue.
Love it. Great advice. What a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much. I look forward to having you come on my other shows as well. I think this was a blast.
Absolutely.
As a leader, it's evident why you're a master teacher.
Well,
So thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Sifu. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and hopefully, whoever's listening, hope you've enjoyed our conversation. You are such a wonderful host here. So, thanks so much, Sifu.
All right, everybody, have a great day. Remember to share this with everyone. This is a conversation everybody should listen to. All right, everybody, have a blessed day. Take care.